today's video or podcast. I must remember not to say video. I keep saying video, it's a podcast. Anyway, today's podcast is about how Boris Johnson has been accused of sending death threats to another Tory MP. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Anyway, gonna read the article and share my thoughts. Here we go. Tory MP accuses Boris Johnson of causing death threats against him in a damning condemnation of demagogue Prime Minister. Demagogue is the word that is used in the article. It's not the word that I just used, in case you thought I was saying it. The article was written by Rob Merrick, who is the deputy political editor of The Independent. So I'll just read some of the article. A Conservative MP has accused Boris Johnson of putting his life at risk because of his tomb-thumping populism over Brexit has triggered death threats against him. Because of his tomb-thumping populism over Brexit has triggered death threats against him. Yeah, I read that right. In an extraordinary criticism, Dominic Grieve said the Prime Minister was behaving like a demagogue, arguing it led directly to vile and menacing messages from members of the public. The former Attorney General spoke out after Mr Johnson claimed that MPs fighting a no-deal Brexit has joined in a terrible coalition with Brussels to keep the UK in the EU. The rhetoric leads straightforwardly to the death threats which I receive, Mr. Grieve warned, and this seems to me that the language he's using is not that of what I would expect of a Conservative Prime Minister. We have a deeply divided country. I think we have to accept that, and we are not going to resolve this problem by this sort of tomb-thumping populism which is trying to espouse. He's behaving like a demagogue, but I don't think we should be surprised about that given his track record. Wow. The Tory MPs are really turning on each other, aren't they? After accusations such as collaborator and traitor, MPs immediately started to receive really vile emails and communication from members of the public, and some of them contained death threats, Mr. Grieve told BBC's Good Morning Scotland. Bear with me. All of us who have been trying to stand up for our principles and for our country are recipients of this, he added. On Wednesday, Mr Johnson blamed the collaboration for the EU refusing to budge on the rejected divorce deal because they still think Brexit can be blocked in Parliament. The awful thing is that the longer this goes on, the more likely it is, of course, that we will be forced to leave with a no-deal Brexit, Mr Johnson claimed. The comments drew immediate criticism, with some MPs warning of a risk of a repeat of the murder of Labour MP Joe Cox by a right-wing fanatic. Mr Grieve added, I want to save the Tory party from the likes of Mr Johnson. He's hijacking it and taking it in directions which I find extremely worrying. He repeated his belief that any caretaking government, if Mr Johnson is toppled in a no-confidence vote, could not be led by Mr Corbyn, who was too divisive a figure. It's absolutely vital in those circumstances that there should be high levels of trust in the person who is doing it, and that they are seen as being there in a caretaker capacity, which to support cross-party to achieve those goals. With the support, yes. But the Labour leader continue to insist opponents of a no-deal Brexit should rally behind him to be the stopgap premier before a general election is called. Wow. So that's the end of the article. So it seems like, the Tory party is really turning on each other, with them going as far as to say, oh, the Prime Minister is sending us death threats, or is inspiring the death threats that are coming from the public. And it just seems to me that this is all a way for either to get Boris Johnson out, or to get to block a no deal in Parliament. Nobody really wants to know. Everyone's waking up and realizing that a no deal is really going to destroy the country, destroy Britain, and I think they're doing all they can to stop this. And Mr. Johnson, who is the Prime Minister, is very determined for us to come out of the 31st of October, that he is willing to do anything. And he knows that there are people within his own party that want to stop a no-deal Brexit. They want to block it in Parliament. Just take a sip of water. I love my water. Yeah, so then you have Jeremy Corbyn, who wants to sort of become part of the caretaker government, so that they can sort out this Brexit mess. But I don't know how this is going to happen without getting the people involved. I've already made a video on my channel. It was actually my first ever video as to how I personally think Brexit should be handled. Yeah, I don't know how much of this is true, if there are actually death threats. I obviously don't agree with death threats. I think death threats are vile and repulsive. But I don't really think you can blame the Prime Minister for that. I mean, it's not his fault if a few nut jobs who really love him and who really want no deal to happen are coming after you. I don't think it's fair to blame the Prime Minister. There are lunatics out there that will do anything, regardless of who their leader is. So I don't think that you should blame the Prime Minister for that, unfortunately. It's not his fault that people are giving you death threats. So don't accuse the Prime Minister of that. I'll just, something caught my eye in the article, and I just want to read it out again. If I can find it, just bear with me. I always have to say bear with me. To let you know I'm still here. Just looking. So Dominic Grieve is saying that the Prime Minister is behaving like a demagogue, and because of that, it's leading to violent, menacing messages from members of the public. Again, you can't really blame the Prime Minister for what people are doing. And Mr. Boris Johnson is saying that MPs that have joined, and any MP that is fighting a no-deal Brexit is in a collaboration with Brussels to keep the EU to keep the UK in the EU. See, that's just paranoia. He wants Brexit to happen no matter what, but other people are trying their best to get a deal through. This rhetoric leads straightforwardly to the death threats which I receive. Again, you can't really blame the Prime Minister for that. Try as you may. The language that he's using is not what you would expect from a Conservative Prime Minister. Again, he's a human being. He'll fall out of character at any point. But you can't really blame the Prime Minister for death threats that you receive. That's just the lunatics out there who will give you a death threat, regardless of who the Prime Minister is. I mean, if it was a Labour government in power, you wouldn't say Oh, I'm getting death threats because of Jeremy Corbyn. So again, I don't agree with the death threats. They are vile, disgusting, and people should be looked into. But I wouldn't blame the Prime Minister for that. And with that, I will leave you guys. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you very much. Please consider subscribing. Oh, I forgot to mention, maybe this is my ignorance, but I haven't heard of Dominic Grieve until this article had come out. So what I'll do is I will Google a picture of Dominic Grieve and put that as a video in the background. So for those of you also that have not heard of Dominic Grieve can know who he is. Yeah, that thought just occurred to me. So I thought to do just let you guys know that I'll be doing that. Thank you. Bye bye.